Welcome to the Church Leaders Podcast, where we're helping you lead better every day. And now, here's your host.
Welcome to the Church Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Day, and we have an informative and engaging episode for you this week. I had the privilege to talk with Jodi Hickerson. Jodi serves as teaching pastor and programming director for Mission Church in Ventura, California. And Jodi and her husband, Mike, along with their 3 daughters, are part of a team that planted Mission Church back in September of 2011. Jodi preaches and teaches at conferences across the country. In fact, you may have heard her at Exponential East this year. If you did, you know what a valuable voice she is to the church. On this week's episode, Jodi and I discuss creative and thoughtful ways to collaborate with organizations in your community to serve your neighbors. We also discuss the power of throwing parties and why our churches should be known as places of hope, joy, and celebration. So let's jump right into my conversation with Jodi Hickerson from Mission Church. Jodi, it's such a pleasure to have you with us here on the Church Leaders Podcast. Thank you for making time for us.
I am honored to be a part of it. Thanks for thinking of me.
Very cool. Okay, so how did you get from growing up in Kentucky to planting a church in California?
Oh, wow. So my dad is a pastor, and we actually, we grew up in Kentucky. Both my parents grew up in Kentucky. We church planted when I was 12 years old in Las Vegas, a church called Canyon Ridge Christian Church, when I was in junior high and some of high school. And then we moved back to Kentucky, and my dad, he transitioned to a 40-year-old church in central Kentucky. And so I was there through the rest of high school. That's where I met my husband. We actually did student ministry at that church in Kentucky. And then we moved to Illinois, actually. So we served at Willow Creek Community Church and then also at Heartland Community Church together in different areas, both with students and college age. And I was on the teaching team at Heartland. And we've developed some great relationships with people at Heartland in our time there, so much so that it became like, man, God's stirring something. And maybe there's a community out there that needs a church like this, because we just loved what we were a part of, how it was reaching the community and cared for people. So it was more like, where could maybe we be sent out to create something, a culture like this, where there's a thriving church where maybe there isn't one or needs another one, And so that started our journey, and we just started praying all the time. We had no idea where. I kept trying to make it closer to Kentucky. I wanted to get closer to home, and then we ended up all the way across the country in California. But that just happened through, as you know, a providential relationship, how that sometimes happens. So another church out here in California in Valencia, their pastor, Rusty George, he's been a longtime friend, and he heard what we were praying about and said, man, if you guys come this way, we will help you. Like, we'll send you people and we'll support you financially and all this awesome stuff. So it was a big open door. We stepped through it, and then every step after, just God was like affirming, like, this is the place. So yeah, there's 3 couples and all of our kiddos, and we just packed up and really felt sent from Heartland in Illinois and planted here in September of 2011.
Awesome. Well, that's a really cool story.
There's a long version.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Very cool. So what was it like to, transition to California, much different culture? And so you're entering it as church planters. So I imagine you're entering with a bit of a missionary mindset, but coming from Kentucky
Sure.
and then from, Illinois, the Midwest, and then heading out to the coast. How did you guys kind of navigate through that?
Well, the one part that was not difficult was we moved in January from Illinois to Southern California. So,
that's an easy move, right?
That was pretty awesome right there. That was like, oh, thank you, God. I didn't even realize how awesome it was here. But yeah, we did spend 9 months. We lived here in Ventura. That's where we're at, before we ever planted, to kind of, know our city and get to know these people and understand the culture and what was important and all the different boroughs and, understand why people felt the way they did about the city and what the greatest needs of the community were, and what the other churches were doing. And, we really got this sense of like, man, God's already working here. We just are getting to join that. And that felt so cool. We were so welcomed by other church communities. It's just, when you're in a place that is maybe outside of the Bible Belt where I had been, the way that the other churches in the community received a plant was like, oh, good, we need more churches, and that was super cool and refreshing for us to be welcomed in that way. They needed more churches, not less. And so, yeah, we definitely did have a learning curve, like just things, people really do say gnarly here and stoked. And, our husbands all learned to surf, and we, just started learning about this community and how different it is. But, people are people, and I think there are hurting, broken people everywhere. And so we've experienced that, oh, wow, people are people wherever you go. It just may look a little different or dress a little different or maybe talk a little different. I think some of the biggest things have been, there hasn't been a lot of people that we've met that we learned right off that have like a faith foundation, or we go to church because you just go to church. That's what people do. That's what my parents did and my grandparents. That's what we had become accustomed to in the Midwest and in the South, that there was a little bit of like some sort of family heritage that said this is something that's important. And when we moved here, that has not been the case. It's like, who goes to church? I have never been to church, So that was definitely like, why would you go? You could surf or hike, or you could go up the coast. Like, why would you go to church? So that was pretty foreign to us. Like, oh man, it's not even on their radar here, like why this would be an important thing. So that was definitely a big learning.
Very cool. So on that note, how did you begin to approach when you're looking at planting the church or developing relationships? How did you approach people who, like you said, church wasn't even on their radar?
Before we planted, you do kind of land and think like, man, every conversation matters. And I will say that's something I kind of looked back at our time serving in other places, and I kind of grieved a little bit, like, why didn't I have this mindset, in my neighborhood in Illinois? Because, I should have, but when we planted, we would have meetings, and it would be just about who did you meet and what did they say? And, every conversation was so important to us in meeting people and just hoping that they would get to be a part of experiencing hope, through what this church would bring. And but we really did a lot of work around what does the city need and those kind of things. So before we ever launched, we started, we started serving at places like the city center, showing up for work days. We hosted, I think 3 free movie nights in the park. We just did, they called them Free Friday Flicks, but kind of just went all out with all the things, and we ended up having just hundreds of people showing up to these movie nights. And I think that they, kind of felt like, wow, there's no strings attached to this. This is just some church that doesn't even exist yet trying to do something good for the community that's free for families. And so I think that we just were like, we want to show up here going, we're for this city. We're not, we just want to be for this place that we're living. And hopefully when we open our doors and people will go, hey, man, that's the church that's, for the city, that did those free movie nights, that showed up at the city center, that's already engaging with homeless, And so we really wanted to kind of build that reputation before we ever opened our doors.
That's awesome because you're intentional in who you wanted to be in the community before you opened your doors. That inherently just became a part of your DNA, right? I mean, that was just who you were. Now, so here we are. What are we? 6 years later? Almost 7 years later?
We'll turn 6. We'll turn 6 years old in September.
Okay,
so about 5.5.
So about 5.5 years later, is that still part of your DNA? Just kind of giving back to the community, no strings attached. Is that kind of who you are?
For sure. I mean, we have kind of our 5 values are tangible hope, offering tangible hope, practical help, significant ministry, throwing great parties, and kingdom impact. So throwing great parties has become like one of our 5 things. We even have someone that's on our staff that her title is Chief Party Thrower.
That's awesome.
So we just want to throw like insanely awesome parties with no strings attached. So we still do the movie nights in the park every summer. Now we have thousands of people showing up, for those, because it's just like, man, there's no strings attached. They really just want something for us. We do a enormous special needs prom for students with special needs 12 to 25. That was something that my student pastor did when I lived in Kentucky. So it kind of has traveled with us everywhere we've been. We've been like, man, we've got to do this. So this will be our 6th one next weekend. And it's the event now is way bigger than our church. We have 425 special needs guests coming and 400 high school students that are hosting them and 2,000 other volunteers.
Wow.
And they're mostly from the community. We kind of like, when we open registration, we're like, oh shoot, we ran out of volunteer spots for the church because the community is so excited about this prom.
That is so cool.
So
yeah.
It's pretty cool that's like for sure throwing great parties. And we like to look at it as in a way of like, we'd like to throw these parties for people who are often overlooked or under-celebrated, that couldn't pay us back. I think, that's what Jesus said to do. So we've kind of decided that was going to be a core part of our mission. And it's how we started. We kind of, fell into it a little bit, just going, let's do movie nights in the park. And then it became like such a part of who we are as a church now. So we love throwing parties.
That's awesome. I'm sure there are some pastors listening to this who would love to have the title of Chief Party Thrower, right? But they're probably wondering how this works practically. So how have you been able to connect people to the church through these parties? Are you intentional in that, or does it just sort of happen more organically through the relationships that you build?
Mm-hmm. Well, we do have some intentionality around, we have a connections area at our movie nights where, you can register for giveaways. And so people are filling out their information. We basically put them on a separate kind of mailing list so we're not spamming them with Mission Church, but just letting them know when the next movie night is, or if they're interested in more information, we always have, cups, the Mission mugs there, or cups there that have info stuffed in them. And if they ask, like, we're willing to say, oh, sure, we'll give you some information. We just don't do a church spiel up front, if that makes sense. Same with Night to Remember. Everyone knows that the prom is hosted by Mission Church. So Mission Church people paid for it. They sponsored every guest, so every guest could come for free. They know that that's who's putting on this prom without us saying anything really night of. I think one of the things that we thought of at the beginning was, maybe we heard this from someone way smarter than us, but that it takes, 5 to 7 kind of positive impressions with some, with a brand or with a, community or organization or church before someone kind of goes, I think maybe I'll check that out. And so we've kind of found like, man, when life starts to hurt in someone's life, or they start to realize like, man, I can't do this on my own, or, they relapse, or tragedy hits and they go, maybe we should try church, that there would be some positive impressions like, well, what about that church that does that prom? Or, what about that church that does those, the thing at the city center or item of, I think that it would just make them maybe think of us in a positive light as far as our reputation in the community for doing good.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. And as you were talking, you mentioned that you do a lot of this no strings attached. And I have found, I think that's very important. Oftentimes in conversations I have with pastors, they want to know, well, if you're doing this, how are you getting people, through your church doors? And I think one of the things that we have to be careful of, and as you're sharing that, it reminded me of this, is that, the last thing we want is for the church to look like we're part of a big bait and switch routine. Like we're doing something special, but it's only because we want to get you into our church. So it seems like that's kind of been your heart. You've said, as Mission Church, we're going to be people who just love our community, and we're going to give back to our community. And then as people, as you've said, go through difficulties in life, or, their hearts become open to seeking more deeply, naturally, because of the relationship that they have developed with Mission Church, that would be a place where they would turn for help or inspiration or to have some questions answered that might be wrestling with.
I think some of it too is, we've been able to use, we have a temporary building right now, but we've been able to offer that to the city when they've asked as an emergency homeless shelter during the rainy season. And, and then just with the prompts, some of the things that you're able to do in the community actually give people a glimpse of heaven and kingdom without saying, Mission Church or come Sunday or here's our next thing. When you're dancing and it's just so equal looking across the room with high school students, special needs, and then their hosts that aren't special needs, loving each other and just having a blast. It's like, oh, this is a glimpse of heaven right here.
Right.
And they don't even know the way that God is like impressing that on their heart, that they get to see that kind of love the way that Jesus intended. So some of it's even in just what you do. You're just planting that seed without saying like, here's the next thing you can come to at Mission,
Very cool. And so you guys, you throw a lot of parties, which is awesome. You have a lot of that connectivity to the community and just kind of giving back. What are some other things that you've done over the last 5.5 years now to really have an impact on like your neighborhood? What are some other things that you've done?
Well, like I mentioned with the 5 things, one of them is practical help. And so we really want to offer practical help as best we can. So we really do come alongside organizations that are already doing amazing ministry and things in the community and kind of ask that question, like, what do you guys need, or how could we help? It's something we do every month called Item of the Month. So, right now, for, one of the organizations, they need diapers. And so we just get to announce, like, bring diapers to church, and we're able to go to that organization and say, here you go. Sometimes it's peanut butter, sometimes it's cleaning supplies. But it's kind of just approaching those relationships within the community that are already doing such great things, instead of recreating it all, just saying, what do you need? And how could our church, how could our people come alongside? It also just really is an easy on-ramp for generosity and allowing people at Mission to be at the store, which they're going to be anyway, and think, beyond themselves, which is pretty cool in that practical help way. We also do something called Give One, which I know several churches do something like this. It's called something different. But we take $1 for every person in attendance every weekend, and then we just find a place to give that away. And it usually goes to an individual or a family that's in need, and they can be, within Mission's community, like the church community, or outside. Like, we hear about something that's happened in the city, and we're able to share those stories anonymously every week and say, your Give $1 just helped pay for a family's medical expenses or meet their rent for the end of the month because dad lost his job or whatever. And it allows people to know, like, man, there's some practical help happening here. So I think that practical help, that's spilled over into really one of our biggest learnings has been the need for pastoral care at Mission. So we prayed when we moved here, like, God, please bring us people that are hurting and broken and messy, and we're ready. We want to meet people where they are, and people with addiction and just so far from you. And then God did. I mean, all that's who started showing up. And then we started praying, like, if you could bring us a few Christians to help us, that would be really awesome too, because it's overwhelming, in walking alongside people that really need help in life. And so pastoral care team has been just key, and that's taken, 5 years to understand, but that's also a place where we really feel like now we can offer practical help because our team is trained to even know how to get someone into, Salvation Army, or if they're willing and they want to get well and work the steps, we know how to do an intake right there on Sunday morning and help our homeless friends and help our people in addiction get into sober living. Our team has been trained, like, we can talk to you and pray with you, but we also have this thing called practical help. So if you want to get well, we will show up with you at your first meeting. We will do that. We have meetings at Mission every day of the week. NA and AA meet every day of the week at Mission. It's just another way to open our doors to say everyone's welcome, first of all, and also we want to be helpful to this community of recovery that's within Ventura, because that's one of our community's biggest needs, is people with addiction. So, yeah, I think those are just some other ways, practical help. So we don't get it right all the time, for sure, and there's plenty more that we love to dream about to be able to do, but those are just some of the other things.
That's awesome. I often say that you become what you celebrate, and it sounds like you guys are intentional about celebrating the good things that God's doing in and through Mission Church with your people. I mean, whenever you're talking about, whenever you bless a family that's in need, you remind people, hey, we were able to do this. Your giving, your generosity has allowed us to do this. So talk to me a little bit about that focus on celebrating those stories that where God is at work, and how do you share those with your people?
I think that one of the, most celebrated, for sure the most celebrated thing at Mission are people who are baptized and have, said, I don't have it all figured out. I don't have my life cleaned up, but I definitely realize that I need a Savior. And I believe that that's Jesus Christ. And so those people that have gone public with their faith, their baptism, that is what is most celebrated at Mission. And so, we're able to just share those stories. Oftentimes we do that via video, and we're able to tell someone's story and where they've come from and how God's just changed their life and why they made that decision. And that's definitely something that we really celebrate, because that's the hope, that's the only hope we've got. So our kind of tagline at Mission is hope for everyone. So that's what if you walk in the door, you're going to see it, 20 times all over everything. We really believe there's hope for everyone. But that's only because of Jesus, not because of us or anything that we do. And so most celebrated is when we are able to see people experiencing that tangible hope and surrendering their life to Christ and knowing it's the beginning of their journey. We really love celebrating that. So
yeah, definitely, that's awesome. So okay. So whenever people make that commitment and you guys get to celebrate that, what do you guys at Mission Church do as far as helping people with that journey? Like you said, it's just the beginning of their journey. How do you help these people who have come to Christ, begin to take those steps along that journey?
Well, I think that for us, and like I said, we're 5 years old, so we're still figuring out a whole lot of things. But we, the community piece of being in relationship and in some sort of group is pretty vital for us, and our group leaders being trained in a way that is to, how to help hurting people and how to walk alongside of people in, a healthy way that is going to point them to Jesus. And so for us, like one of our first questions, and I'm sure that's true for so many people listening, is, whose group are you in? Because that's the way that we're going to get you connected in relationship, to be discipled, to have a discipleship relationship with someone who's going to walk alongside you. One of the things I love the most about the church, anywhere, the whole, the Big C church, is people that have been walking with Jesus for so long, and they have such a deep relationship with him that they realize it's not about them. And they're showing up at some 5-year-old church plant in a movie theater basically because they just want to give it away. And they're showing up because they want to walk alongside someone else and they want to disciple someone else. And so being able to connect people into those relationships is like so cool to watch, and then get to kind of have a front row seat to watch how God transforms a life through relationships. So that's the primary way, would be via relationship.
Okay, so Jodi, you're a little over 5 years into your church plant. You've got a lot of cool things as a part of your DNA that we've talked about. You're really working hard at helping people think about generosity in a really tangible way. And you're really looking at helping to give back to your community. You're looking at people coming and being restored and working through, addiction and recovery and those types of things, and people journeying alongside of them in discipling relationships. Oh, that's awesome. So at this point, you guys have 4 different services every Sunday. Is that true?
We do. Yeah, we do. Yep.
Okay, so
We
how?
have 3 on Sunday morning and 1 on Sunday night.
Wow. Okay, so are all of those the same type of a gathering, or are they different?
No, yeah, all 4 services are identical. So,
Okay.
Yeah, it's mainly been a space issue. We are in a movie theater that, has limited capacity, so we just keep adding services.
Very cool.
So,
Very
but it's
cool.
fun. That's
Yeah,
a fun,
definitely.
good problem.
Definitely. And so how did you come to the point where you decided, hey, we need to add? Was it just a space issue completely, as you said?
You know what? Every time it's been a little different. I don't know if every time, but I do know that the first time we added a service, going from 1 to 2, was proactive. We weren't out of room. We had seats available, but we decided to move to 2 services, basically for our volunteers. We were realizing that we were a church plant, asking a lot of people that we're serving and, developing our own culture. And some of our key people weren't even getting to experience the service at all,
Right.
So we really felt like, man, we need to go to 2 services, and it was almost like stepping out in faith kind of a deal. Like, well, let's see how this goes. And if we need to, we'll shrink the room and we'll put up pipe and drape in the back or whatever we got to do to kind of, make this service option available, because it's worth it to us for our volunteers to be able to attend church and actually invite. Like, if those 2 things are important to us, that people would attend and invite, then we need to give, our people that are volunteering that opportunity. And so that's what made us go to 2 services. Now, fast forward, when we went to 3, it was a space issue. It was like, okay, well, this may be crazy, but I think we need to go to 3. And, then we're telling our ministry leaders, like, hold on, you're going to have to recruit some more volunteers because we're going to 3. And I think the same was true when we went to 4. It was trying to figure out how to add for space and realizing there wasn't another optimal time on Sunday morning. So we moved to Sunday night, which has been really cool. It's almost become a service that, how it is when people work on Sunday morning. It's been like the only one they can attend. So we really love that too.
That's very cool. Now, I hear a lot of wisdom in that initial proactive step, that you guys were, again, thinking very intentionally about who you were as a church and what you were attempting to champion and what your DNA was. And because you knew who God was calling you to be, you stepped back and said, wait a second, our core people are missing out on the opportunity to, be a part of the worship gathering and to invite, the people they're meeting to come and be a part of it. And so you're very, very intentional in making that decision. Do you believe that making that decision, did you see that as becoming a catalyst for continuing to reach more people? Like the opportunity for your volunteers to be, engaged in the worship gathering and, kind of refueled. Did you see that as a catalyst for your development as a church?
When I look back at that time, I really do feel like it was. I think if you've got people, you think about a church plant, these are people that are choosing to set up kids' rooms, in an arcade or whatever it is. Like they're committed to Jesus, they're showing up, they believe in this church plant, and then they have zero opportunity to attend or to invite. And so I think when that, kind of got unleashed, we really did see it as a catalyst, because now your core people that were already all in have this opportunity to even experience the church. Like, oh, this is why I love this place, and this is why, and I want to invite my friends, and in that way. So, I think that really was a catalyst, like starting to. I always think, like when I talk to other church planters, I'm like, you want to go to 2 sooner than you think. I know you're scared that it's going to be like, what if there's 45 people in the room? It's like, it's okay. God shows up. It's okay. So I think that going to 2 before you think, you're ready, that was a big deal for us. And I think that, God did use it as a catalyst for growth and reaching more people.
That's awesome. And I think that's going to be great encouragement for a lot of pastors and a lot of church planners who are probably kind of in that same place where, their core team is doing everything, right? And and looking for a way and just taking that step of faith, right? And because you want to build that foundation moving forward. So as we're looking ahead, I guess 2 questions. One is, 5.5 years ago, when you guys set out on this adventure, did you think you would be experiencing what you're experiencing now?
Oh, man. No. I mean, I think that I don't know if I could have envisioned the 5.5 years. I know that we really knew we were stepping out, and we had come from churches that were, mega churches is where we had come from, had been our experience. And so we really had to kind of lay that down, like, that part of us, like, success is obedience. It's not about size. It's not about growth. It's not about how rapid this takes off or if people show up. We feel obedient to God, and that's success in God's eyes. And so, it was all of us kind of, dying to that place inside of us and thinking, did we have all this influence and we just gave it up? And, so we didn't really know what to expect. We really thought, like, we just heard stories like church planning is really hard and, it may not work. And so we just really were kind of like, well, we're surrendered to that and we're just going to see what God does. So I don't think I could have imagined where we're at now, 5.5 years in. I know I couldn't imagine like what God's done in my own heart. Like I just really, I've loved God. I've seen Jesus change people's lives, but in the way that this has been such a faith adventure and watching God transform lives in this community has just really, changed me. And then walking alongside people, the way that what's become the culture of our church, that's definitely impacted me in a significant way. And so, I don't think I could have ever envisioned it. God definitely done more than, I could ask or imagine.
That's awesome. So as you and your leadership team there at Mission Church are praying and planning and looking ahead, what are some things that you're kind of dreaming about in the future for the church?
We're getting ready to change locations. We've purchased a building, so that's big in our world right now. So, but we're really focused on kind of looking forward to like how to become a sending church. We believe in church planting. We believe it's a very effective way to reach people. We believe it's a kingdom win when there's more churches and not less. And so we really want to become that, I think, a church that sends out and equips people and looks at what's in our hand. Like, do we have people around us or on our staff or core leaders that are church planters, that we could send out? So we're already thinking that way.
That's awesome.
Up and down the coast, or what would God have for us? We don't know.
Right.
Sometimes when you start, you're like, we're planting a church. We're crazy. And now we're like, are we really thinking about planting more churches? So, but, I feel like we're kind of just ruined in the best possible way for what God does. If there's a vibrant community of believers and, that shows up somewhere and says there's hope for everyone, what God does is so cool. So I think we're excited about that kind of future of being able to be a sending church. That's
very cool. I love that. And I think that question that you pose is a great question for every pastor to ask. Are there people on our staff? Are there people who are, in ministry leadership, volunteers who are potentially church planters, that God is stirring in their heart? And oftentimes, we love those core people so much, and they contribute in such a meaningful way that we almost, wrestle with that. Well, do we really want to let them go? But I think one of those great blessings, is saying, okay, God's doing something in your heart and in your life, and we're here to support you and prayerfully back you up and be a part of that sending and that birthing of a new movement, a new church. So. The church in Valencia, Real Life Church, that said they would help us when we moved out here, were so open-handed. They were very open-handed, financially and helping us, supporting us as we fundraise.
But also, they basically, during those 9 months before we planted, allowed us to teach, to do the announcements, our worship leader to lead worship, so that people at that church got to know us. It's about 45 minutes from where we were planting. And then, he got up and said, we need 200 of you to commit for 6 months to driving over to Ventura every Sunday. We need you to move your giving over to Ventura. We need you to move your volunteering to Ventura and your attending to Ventura. So for 6 months, that's how open-handed they were with us. And people did it. They sent people every week that sometimes they were just butts and seats, and that was important. It was like an important serve that day. We need you in the room, or we need you in the nursery, or we need you, greeting people. And what we learned over those 6 months, because, 6 months was up and they were gone. They were all back at their church at Real Life. And we were able to look around then and see like, oh, wow, we have 140 people from Ventura. This is our church. But, in church planning world, starting from nothing and then having 140 in 6 months, what they did for us was so priceless.
Right.
In showing up and serving the way they did and giving the way they did. So we can't wait till we get to kind of pay that forward and go, oh, hope we can be that generous and that open-handed and telling people at Mission, like, you totally should go. You have to go set up and tear down for them, and you have to be a part of that. It's going to be so fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, what a blessing that is from what do you say, Real Life? Is that the name of the church? Real Life?
Real Life Church.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
What a blessing. What a blessing. That's so awesome.
That's cool.
Well, Jodi, I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you and to hear about how God's been at work in your adventure at Mission Church and just being a part of your community and how you have been very intentional at reaching into your community and really trying to be the hands and feet of Christ. Very inspiring, and I'm sure that our listeners have the opportunity to gain a lot of very practical things from our conversation.
And Mission continues to be like, I can't imagine missing this. That's what I always think. Like, I'm so glad we said yes to God. But in the same breath, like, we do not have it all figured out. And, we're just learning and we're just a church plant. And so, I appreciate the opportunity, especially since we're just so young and learning.
Yeah, but I tell you what, just from our conversation, there's been a lot of good things that God's been doing there, a lot of wisdom and a lot of way that He's been directing you, and you guys have obviously been obedient, and so we thank you for sharing that with our people.
Thank you.
Yeah, if someone wanted to get in touch with you or with the team at Mission Church, what would be the best way for them to connect with you guys?
I'm pretty sure that if you go to missionventura.com, there's a little, staff and all of our emails there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Or you could always email info@missionventura.com. But that's where we're at.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Jodi. Again, I appreciate you sharing a bit of your journey with us and the encouragement that brings to pastors across the country. So thank you for being a part of Church Leaders Podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Every week, as we are putting the episodes together, we're thinking of you, our pastors and ministry leaders, and striving to provide insightful and inspiring interviews as you seek to grow as a kingdom leader. So we hope you're finding value from the Church Leaders Podcast, and if so, we'd certainly appreciate you taking a few moments to head over to iTunes and leave us a review. Your positive reviews and ratings help other church leaders more easily find our podcasts so they can benefit from these interviews as well. And again, we thank you in advance. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas for guests, I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email to podcast@ChurchLeaders.com, or you can connect with me on Twitter. So until next time, this is Jason Day, encouraging you to love well and lead well.
You've been listening to the Church Leaders Podcast. For articles, videos, and free resources that will help you lead better every day, visit our website, ChurchLeaders.com. Thanks for listening.